Do you remember the soul music echoing every time Prince Akeem walked through the doors of McDowell's? In 1988, Coming to America exploded globally with $288 million at the box office, turning Eddie Murphy into the reigning face of American cinema. Roars of laughter filled theaters. VHS tapes were rewound until they wore out, and an entire generation of audiences grew up with the legendary kingdom of Zamunda. But 38 years have passed. The dazzling lights of 1988 are now nothing more than haunting, deeply guarded truths buried behind the scenes of Hollywood. One actor from the film passed away, and that death was kept hidden for 45 days. No press releases, no obituaries. Even his own biological daughter stated she was never informed. Today, we will rewind time to look back at the cast of Coming to America after nearly 4 decades, who they once were, how Hollywood treated them, and what truly happened after the cameras stopped rolling. Number 1. John Amos Cleo McDowell. John Amos was born on December 27, 1939 in Newark, New Jersey, before standing behind the counter of McDowell's in Coming to America. He was already a titan of American television. Gen X audiences etched him into their memories as the patriarch James Evans in Good Times and the legendary warrior Kunta Kinte in Roots. By 1988, Amos stepped into the role of Cleo McDowell, the shrewd diner owner with a thick mustache, a vigilant gaze, and a mop always at the ready. Amidst a world of colorful comedy, he brought the grounded presence of a man who had been crushed by life but stubbornly remained standing. But after the box office glory of 1988, Hollywood gradually closed its doors on him. Entering the 90s, Amos was no longer handed roles with the same gravitational pull. From a face that once drove television ratings to their peak, he was pushed down to fleeting guest appearances. By the early 2000s, the name that had once defined pop culture was relegated to low-budget B-movies. Supplementing his income through minor autograph conventions, the man who once commanded the silence of millions in front of screens now had to survive on the glorious memories of his past. By 2023, everything began to shatter. Leaked medical reports revealed Amos was hospitalized in Los Angeles in a state of severe emaciation. The LAPD opened an investigation into allegations of elder abuse. A family civil war quickly erupted in the public eye. His daughter accused her younger brother of manipulating their father's medical care and isolating him from loved ones. Soon after, haunting videos surfaced on social media. John Amos lying in a hospital bed, his voice hoarse and broken, struggling to deny that he was being controlled. That image sent shivers down the public's spine. An icon who once represented patriarchal strength was now exposed in his most vulnerable state to millions of prying eyes. On August 21, 2024, at a medical facility in Inglewood, California, John Amos breathed his last breath due to heart failure at the age of 84. But the chilling part lies in how his death was covered up. For 45 days, there were no press releases, no obituaries, no public confirmations whatsoever. Even his biological daughter stated she was entirely uninformed. It wasn't until early October, when his death certificate leaked to the media, that the world was stunned to realize the former king of television had passed away in absolute silence. The funeral was held privately. His ashes were handled quietly, far from the public eye, at the time of his death. John Amos's net worth was a mere $3 million, a bitter figure when placed alongside the billions in profits television networks had reaped from his name. But more terrifying than the money is the truth that the war for control over his final legacy remains unresolved to this day. And if you think a death covered up in isolation is the greatest tragedy of Coming to America, the next character will show you that Hollywood can drain a human being in far more ruthless ways. Number 2. Madge Sinclair Queen Aeolian. Madge Sinclair was born on April 28, 1938 in Kingston, Jamaica. Before stepping into Hollywood, she worked as a teacher and a social worker. American audiences knew her through powerful roles in Roots and Trapper John, M.D., In 1988, she donned the royal garments of Queen Aeolian in Coming to America. A calm gaze, a majestic demeanor, and a voice potent enough to silence the King of Zamunda with just one short sentence. But behind that magnificent crown was a silent war that dragged on for years. In the early 80s, Madge Sinclair was diagnosed with leukemia, during an era when Hollywood was extraordinarily brutal to actors with underlying health conditions. Leaking a medical record practically meant the end of a career. Studios feared skyrocketing insurance costs. Massive contracts could vanish after a single phone call. Sinclair chose silence, continuing to work as if nothing had happened. For over a decade that followed, she simultaneously acted and secretly battled prolonged rounds of chemotherapy, between filming scenes for Gabriel's Fire or voicing Sarabi in The Lion King. She frequently had to be hospitalized for severe exhaustion. Audiences heard the powerful voice of Simba's mother on screen, but no one knew the woman behind the microphone was being consumed by disease day by day. Behind the theatrical makeup were piling medical bills and a body whose strength was steadily draining. On December 20th, 1995, Madge Sinclair passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 57 after more than 13 years of quietly fighting blood cancer. There were no massive headlines in the papers, no official farewells. The majority of the audience only heard the news through brief bulletins broadcast on local radio and television. Her body was cremated. Her ashes were returned to Jamaica in silence, far away from the media. At the time of her passing, the net worth of the actress who once sat on the throne of Zamunda was estimated at under $1 million, a minuscule fraction compared to the tens of millions that Roots and The Lion King had raked in for Hollywood. But if the silence of Madge Sinclair is enough to make one choke up. The story of the King of Zamunda reveals that Hollywood is willing to strip away the very essence of a person's identity. Number 3. James Earl Jones, King Jaffe Joffer. James Earl Jones was born on January 17, 1931 in Mississippi. His childhood was overshadowed by a stutter so severe that, for a time, he almost completely refused to communicate, but the very boy who was once terrified to speak would later possess one of the most iconic voices in American cinematic history. In 1988, Jones played King Jaffe Joffer in Coming to America. The lion fur cloak, the commanding gaze, a voice as deep and thick as thunder that seemed to force the entire room into silence whenever he appeared. From Darth Vader to the King of Zamunda. James Earl Jones was the embodiment of cinematic authority, but time always reclaims everything it once bestowed. Entering the 2000s, Type 2 diabetes began taking a heavy toll on his health. His mobility declined. Direct on-camera roles became increasingly sparse. Hollywood no longer needed the body of James Earl Jones. They only needed his voice. The greatest tragedy of his final years lay not in his illness, but in having to witness technology prepare to replace him. After his wife of nearly 40 years passed away, in 2016, Jones lived an increasingly isolated life in New York. Age made controlling his voice more difficult. In 2022, he signed an agreement allowing Lucasfilm to use AI technology to recreate his Darth Vader voice for future projects. A living legend had to watch an algorithm learn to become him. On September 9, 2024, James Earl Jones passed away at his home in Pawling, New York, at the age of 93. What haunts many is not just his departure, but the fact that less than 2 years prior, he had finalized the deal, handing over the rights to digitally clone his voice to AI. The King of Zamunda quietly departed the real world, leaving behind a digital phantom that could continue to exist indefinitely. His funeral was held privately under strict security. At the time of his passing, James Earl Jones's net worth was estimated at around $45 million, a massive fortune. But one accompanied by a bitter paradox: the man who had conquered a stutter to captivate the world ultimately had to surrender his very voice to machines. And if losing one's identity is chilling enough, The story of Arsenio Hall proves that Hollywood can wipe out an entire empire following a single executive boardroom decision. Number 4. Arsenio Hall Semi. Arsenio Hall was born on February 12, 1956 in Cleveland, Ohio. He started as a stand-up comedian with razor-sharp pacing and an almost inexhaustible reservoir of energy. In Coming to America, he took on multiple roles, but Semi was the character audiences never forgot, the cunning aide always scheming to enjoy a life of luxury from a rundown apartment in Queens. The banter between Semi and Prince Akeem quickly turned Hall into a highly sought-after face on American television. In the early 90s, the Arsenio Hall show exploded. The roaring chant of "woof, woof, woof" from the studio audience echoed across America every single night. But late-night television is a battlefield with no room for those who miss a beat. By 1994, the ratings war against Jay Leno and David Letterman grew increasingly brutal. Many local stations began dropping Hall's program from their lineups, causing a cascading collapse of his distribution network. On May 27, 1994, the Arsenio Hall show aired its final episode. In just a few months, the man who was once a pop culture icon was transformed into a name pushed entirely out of the entertainment industry's center. What followed was an isolation spanning nearly 2 decades. Hall virtually vanished from national television, shifting his focus to raising his son as a single father. In many subsequent interviews, he admitted he could no longer keep up with the breakneck speed of the entertainment industry's evolution. When he attempted to return with a rebooted version of the Arsenio Hall show in 2013, the program lasted only 1 season before being canceled again due to low ratings. A new generation of viewers barely recognized the man who had once shaken American screens in the early 90s. The greatest death of Arsenio Hall didn't happen in a hospital. It occurred on the night his final episode aired in 1994. No warning sirens, no funeral wreaths, just the studio lights clicking off, the audience's cheers fading, and one of the most influential black talk show empires in America being erased from prime time, almost instantly, following a single season of failed syndication negotiations. Today, Arsenio Hall lives a relatively quiet life in California. His net worth is estimated at around $30 million, largely stemming from investments retained from his peak years. But money cannot buy back 3 decades of being exiled from the center of pop culture. Hollywood doesn't always destroy you with scandals or prison sentences. Sometimes, it simply makes the entire world forget you ever existed. Number 5. Louis Anderson Maurice. Louis Anderson was born on March 24, 1953, in St. Paul, Minnesota. He began as a stand-up comedian known for his awkward, self-deprecating, and highly energetic style. In 1988, he appeared in Coming to America as Maurice the McDowell's employee trapped behind the kitchen counter and endless minimum wage shifts. The gummy smile, the distinctively high-pitched voice. Just a few minutes on screen were enough to make his face unforgettable to Gen X audiences. Entering the 90s, the bright lights of his comedy stage began to dim. The sitcom The Louis Show was canceled after just 1 season in 1996. Invitations for major film roles increasingly disappeared. From a familiar face on national television, Anderson was gradually pushed back to small stages and local casinos to maintain his income. True darkness descended in the late 90s. Anderson was swept into an extortion plot regarding his private life, to prevent the incident from detonating in the media. He quietly paid out tens of thousands of dollars over many years to suppress the scandal. The prolonged psychological pressure severely worsened his eating disorder. His weight spiraled out of control. His cardiovascular health plummeted, while audiences still remembered a comedian always cracking jokes on TV. His body had already begun collapsing from within. On January 21, 2022, Louis Anderson passed away in Las Vegas at the age of 68 due to complications from blood cancer. No more stages, no more studio laughter. The man who had once made all of America laugh ended his life in a hospital bed after a prolonged period of medical treatment. His funeral was held privately with family and close friends. At the time of his passing, Louis Anderson's net worth was estimated at around $10 million. A massive portion of that fortune had been eroded by medical treatments, legal settlements, and years of battling illness. But Maurice's story was still not the most bitter downward slide among that cast, because for Lisa McDowell, the fairy tale dream of coming to America ultimately led straight to years of intense courtroom battles far from the Hollywood lights. Number 6. Shari Headley Lisa McDowell. Shari Headley was born on July 15, 1964, in Queens, New York, before entering cinema. She was a familiar model for fashion magazines and 80s music videos. In 1988, Headley became the leading lady of Coming to America, playing Lisa McDowell, the girl who dared to reject the wealthiest prince of Zamunda to decide her own life. The radiant smile, the gaze that was both gentle and guarded. That image quickly turned Lisa into one of the most memorable leading ladies for the Gen X VHS era. But following the massive success of Coming to America, Hollywood did not turn Shari Headley into the new princess of cinema as many had predicted. Instead, she gradually shifted to serialized television. All My Children, Guiding Light, soap operas filmed continuously with grueling schedules and scripts that changed almost daily. Headley continued to appear on screen throughout the 90s, but drifted further and further from the epicenter of pop culture that Coming to America had once provided her. The greatest upheaval occurred off-set. Her marriage to rapper Christopher Martin shattered, quickly spiraling into a prolonged legal war over child custody and financial support. Litigation files constantly appeared in entertainment tabloids for years, while Hollywood began hunting for the new, younger crop of 90s actresses. Headley spent most of her time stepping out of courtrooms instead of onto red carpets. By the early 2000s, leading cinematic roles had virtually vanished. No career-destroying scandal, no shocking controversy, just the moment the studios simply stopped calling. Today, Shari Headley lives a fairly private life and occasionally appears in television projects. Her net worth is estimated at around $2 million, quite modest, considering she was once the female lead in one of the most successful American comedies of the late 80s. But at least, Headley can still be seen on screen. The next man almost entirely vanished from Hollywood's memory before passing away in silence in his homeland of the Bahamas. Number 7. Calvin Lockhart Colonel Izzy. Calvin Lockhart was born on October 18, 1934, in Nassau, Bahamas. During the 70s, he was one of the few black actors Hollywood built up as a genuine leading man, rather than confining him to stereotyped supporting roles. Uptown Saturday Night in 1974, alongside Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby, once splashed his name across American movie theaters. By 1988, Lockhart appeared in Coming to America as Colonel Izzy, the hot-tempered father of Princess Imani. The thick mustache, the thunderous barks. The scene where he stormed into the cramped Queen's apartment to force Prince Akeem to marry his daughter quickly became one of the film's most memorable comedic moments. But after Coming to America, Calvin Lockhart's career did not collapse due to a scandal. It was simply erased from the center of Hollywood in a far colder manner. Entering the 90s, his name slowly disappeared from major film projects. No more leading roles, no more long-term contracts, only fleeting appearances on cable television that quickly faded from the audience's memory. Casting calls thinned out year by year. Then they stopped entirely. In the early 2000s, Lockhart left Los Angeles and returned to Nassau to live a quiet life. No retirement press conferences, no farewell interviews. The man who had once stood beside Hollywood's biggest names now lived entirely disconnected from the industry that had exploited his image for decades. In his final years, chronic cardiovascular issues began to erode his health. As film contracts vanished, so did his financial stability. Ongoing medical expenses continuously ate into the remaining funds from his golden era. In Nassau, many still recognized him as Colonel Izzy. But in Hollywood, the name Calvin Lockhart was almost never mentioned again. March 29, 2007, in Nassau, Bahamas. A severe stroke caused Calvin Lockhart's health to completely collapse. He passed away at the age of 72 in the very city where he was born, thousands of miles away from Hollywood. His departure caused almost no ripples in the American film industry. A few brief obituaries appeared and quickly vanished from the news cycle. His funeral was held privately in the Bahamas at the time of his passing. Calvin Lockhart's net worth was estimated at under $1 million, the vast majority of it drained by end-of-life medical bills. He was born in Nassau and he died in Nassau. Between those 2 points lay a few decades where Hollywood needed his face on box office posters, before moving on to the next generation as if nothing had ever happened. But even that oblivion was not the darkest thing the cast of Coming to America had to face, because the next person walked onto the 1988 set as an unknown face, only to watch his own career collapse publicly years later amidst court files and paparazzi cameras. Number 8. Ralph Bellamy, Randolph Duke. Ralph Bellamy was born on June 17, 1904 in Chicago, Illinois. Before Coming to America, he had spent over half a century in Hollywood with films like His Girl Friday and the Awful Truth masterpieces belonging to the golden age of American cinema, long before color television became mainstream. In 1988, Bellamy appeared as Randolph Duke, the bankrupt billionaire shivering on the streets of New York alongside his brother. Mortimer, the bushy white beard, the eyes that lit up at the sight of Prince Akeem's bag of cash. And then the line, "Mortimer, we're back." Just a few short seconds were enough to turn the Duke brothers into one of the most enduringly memorable cameos in the history of American comedy. But behind that hilarious scene lay a reality few knew. By the late 80s, Bellamy was over 80 years old but continued to take small roles just to sustain his finances. The generation of actors from the old studio system received practically no true residuals from their classic films re-airing on television. The works that had helped Hollywood generate millions over the decades did not yield Bellamy a proportionate income. Bellamy's final years were overshadowed by chronic lung disease. During his participation in late 80s projects, his health deteriorated so rapidly that many shooting schedules had to be maximally condensed to avoid the risk of him collapsing on set. Behind the makeup and the comedic lines was a body slowly being drained by respiratory complications and old age. The audience saw Randolph Duke just escaping bankruptcy. But in real life, Ralph Bellamy was using the final years of his life to relentlessly cling to the very industry that had consumed almost his entire youth. November 29, 1991, in Santa Monica, California. Ralph Bellamy passed away at St. John's Health Center at the age of 87 after a long battle with lung disease, just 3 years after his unforgettable appearance in Coming to America. The name that had spanned multiple generations of Hollywood closed its journey in silence. His body was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in California. At the time of his passing, Ralph Bellamy's net worth was estimated at around $5 million, a respectable sum for an actor of his generation, but also the direct result of him working almost until his dying breath. And the terrifying part is that right beside Bellamy, his on-screen brother was also hiding another disease, one that would swiftly drag him to the grave just 2 years later. Number 9. Don Ameche, Mortimer Duke. Don Ameche was born on May 31, 1908 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. During the golden era of 20th Century Fox, he was one of Hollywood's most sought-after leading men, starring in films like The Story of Alexander Graham Bell and Heaven Can Wait. By 1988, Ameche appeared in Coming to America as Mortimer Duke, the Aging. grumpy billionaire who was never cured of his obsession with money. The glaring eyes upon seeing Akeem's stack of cash, the greedy smile that almost warped his elderly face. His reappearance alongside Ralph Bellamy quickly became a spectacular resurrection for two icons who seemed to have been forgotten by Hollywood. But preceding that comeback was over a decade where he had almost entirely vanished from cinema, for most of the 70s. Don Ameche received virtually no notable roles from Hollywood. From the status of an A-list star, he was relegated to small theatrical stages and low-budget TV shows to maintain his income. The studios that had once built his name now pivoted to hunting for younger faces. In Hollywood, age is not a sign of experience. It is usually a signal that you are about to be replaced. In the late 80s, as his career unexpectedly revived thanks to Trading Places and Coming to America, Don Ameche received a much grimmer diagnosis: prostate cancer. He kept his illness a secret from almost the entire public. The fear of being discarded by the studios once again drove Ameche to continue working in silence. He appeared on set, looking healthy, signed new contracts, and completed his scenes while the disease silently metastasized inside his body. Audiences saw an aging legend returning to the top. Hollywood saw an actor still capable of generating profit. But Don Ameche knew perfectly well how fast the clock was counting down. December 6, 1993, Scottsdale, Arizona. Don Ameche passed away at his home at the age of 85 after his battle with prostate cancer. Just a short time prior, he had still been finishing his final scenes for Karina. His ashes were taken back to Iowa for burial at the time of his passing. His net worth was estimated at around $10 million, money that arrived late after years of being pushed away from Hollywood's spotlight. What makes his story so chilling does not lie in that number. It lies in the fact that a man who had been completely forgotten by the industry ultimately had to return to work while his body was quietly being devoured by cancer every single day. 3 decades later, Hollywood continues to create the exact same cycle. The only difference is that this time, the person stepping out of the light was not an aging legend from the 40s, but an Oscar winner walking with his head bowed through a mob of reporters outside a Manhattan courthouse. Number 10, Cuba Gooding Jr., Boy in the Barbershop. Cuba Gooding Jr. was born on January 2, 1968 in the Bronx, New York. The vast majority of Gen X audiences completely failed to realize that the young man making a fleeting appearance in Clarence's barbershop in the 1988 film Coming to America would one day become an Oscar winner. No lines, no character name, just a young face squeezed into a frame full of veteran comedians. Less than a decade later, everything changed completely. Jerry Maguire turned Cuba Gooding Jr. into a pop culture phenomenon. And the moment he screamed, "Show me the money," it transcended cinema to become one of the most iconic quotes in 90s America. In 1997, Gooding Jr. won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Hollywood believed they had just found their next superstar. And almost immediately following that peak, the nosedive began. Boat Trip, Snow Dogs, Daddy Day Camp were 3 consecutive titles that dragged Gooding Jr.'s career off its Oscar trajectory. The films were crushed by critics. Box office revenues plummeted. The roles that once allowed him to detonate energy on screen were gradually replaced by low-quality commercial projects and straight-to-DVD releases. From the early 2000s, major studios began pulling back. Leading roles vanished. A-list directors stopped calling his name. In Hollywood, an Oscar isn't always a destination. Sometimes, it's just the highest point before everything begins to plummet. By the late 2000s, Gooding Jr.'s floundering career entered a much darker phase. A series of misconduct allegations surfaced in New York related to incidents in bars and nightclubs. Multiple women stepped forward to file complaints. His name consistently appeared in investigation files and prolonged court hearings stretching across years. Paparazzi cameras began waiting outside Manhattan courthouses instead of cinematic red carpets. In 2022, Gooding Jr. agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge to avoid a drawn-out trial process. Several subsequent civil lawsuits were also settled out of court. Audiences had once watched an infinitely energetic actor roaring in the middle of a stadium in Jerry Maguire. Now, they saw a man walking with his head bowed through a swarm of reporters outside a Manhattan courthouse. Cuba Gooding Jr. is still alive, but following the legal scandals. Large-scale commercial film projects have virtually disappeared from his resume. Major studios steer clear of the name that once stood at the epicenter of the late 90s Oscar season. There is no official declaration of a blacklist. In Hollywood, when the phone simply stops ringing, that is usually the clearest answer. Cuba Gooding Jr.'s net worth is currently estimated at around $12 million, vastly lower than the status an Oscar winner once possessed at his peak. Years of legal battles, attorney fees, and settlement agreements have significantly eroded that fortune. 30 years ago, Cuba Gooding Jr. stood on the Oscar stage amidst the applause of all of Hollywood. Years later, the image permanently attached to him is the sight of him bowing his head to walk past police barricades and reporters outside a Manhattan courthouse. In Hollywood, sometimes the distance between those two moments is shorter than anyone could ever imagine. Outro. In 1988, Coming to America brought audiences a fairy tale kingdom filled with laughter. But behind Zamunda were entirely different files. An actress who hid her blood cancer for years just to keep working in front of the camera. A legendary voice digitized before its owner passed away. A death covered up for 45 days, even from his own biological child. An Oscar winner who went from Hollywood's most prestigious stage to prolonged hearings in Manhattan. None of those crowns existed in real life, only old age, disease, the calls that stopped coming, and the Hollywood lights fading much faster than most people could ever imagine. Out of all these files, John Amos, James Earl Jones, or Cuba Gooding Jr., which story haunts you the most, or do you believe there are still untold secrets behind 70s Hollywood? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. If you want to continue exploring the dark corners behind the entertainment industry, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. The upcoming stories go even deeper and will soon be revealed.